Hey there, everyone. Welcome to A Slice of Life with Kellie and Jon. Today, we have a special guest, Debra Denker, who is an author and a journalist, and she's an award-winning author and journalist. So welcome to A Slice of Life. How are you, Debra?
Thanks. Yeah, great. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Yay. And you know Jon from,
Oh,
how do
for
you guys know each other?
years. Good friend.
Yes,
One of the best friends
yeah,
somebody could ever hope to have.
for that
Oh,
slice
he
of
is.
my life when I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Deborah also is in the same community where I lived,
Oh.
and certainly because we were authors, our paths had to cross,
Mhm.
we just struck up a friendship, especially since I there was so much about Deborah and the things she would write about and her life. And she loves cats. And of course, I had my
Oh.
cats out in Santa Fe too.
Yeah.
Certainly, cats are a good thing to have in Santa Fe, for sure, because of all the little things that tend to run around outside the house. And
So they keep the
you don't
creepy
want,
crawlies away.
you don't
From
want
inside the house. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
so, but
Good
that's
to
it.
know.
So I met Deborah years ago, and we've just remained friends since then. And I think that especially what she started out as a journalist, she has some interesting stories
Mhm.
to tell.
Awesome.
So
Hey,
why don't
Jon, can you amp up your mic or something or move it closer or we're not hearing you very well.
There you go.
Is
How's
that
that? Is that
better?
good?
Yeah, I think that's better. Yeah,
Okay.
good.
Okay.
So you have a story about a cat, right? Didn't you write a book about a cat or something?
Yeah, it's a time travel book. A lot of people really enjoy, science fiction, speculative fiction, time travel, beginning in 2050 at Stonehenge. And time travelers come from 2350 to go back in time and, avoid some of the issues that we're facing today. So let me see if I can get one of my cats to show up. Sammy.
Ah,
Oh, well, cats. Come on, Sammy. Oh,
well, yeah,
well,
they do what they want.
Yeah,
yeah.
and
So
when they want.
anyway, this is the name of the book. It's
Okay.
available on Amazon, and I have a website, weathermenders.com.
Okay.
And so anyway, Sammy, if he ever shows up, he appeared on Christmas Eve of 2016 in a blizzard, and his chip didn't lead to anyone. My friend and I tried. We put up
Oh,
flyers and internet, posts and everything, and he stayed. And he's a little gray cat, just like the one in my book. And I had written the draft of the novel, because it includes the time traveling cat who's telepathic and talks to the people. And then when he appeared, I thought, oh my gosh, you're the spitting image of Georgie the time traveling cat. So I'm supposed to, go ahead and publish this book through my company. And so that's what I did, and it won Cat Book of the Year 2018 from Purrs of Wisdom, which is a blog by my friend Ingrid King about all things cat. I can't believe he's not
fun.
coming. He's
It's
just in
just
the other
serendipity, though,
room.
that he showed up on your doorstep and you're already writing this story. And
Yeah.
cool.
So I've called him Samadhi Time Walker because I think he's a time traveling cat too, and so we call him Sammy.
How cute. Really
Yeah.
cute. And
So
so
Yeah.
the book addresses, it's talking about obviously we all know the climate's changing. We have different
Mhm.
opinions on why, but
Mhm.
right now, currently, there's the fires in LA,
Yeah.
there's hurricanes and tornadoes in the
Yeah.
southeast. And, our
Mhm.
clients and climate has changed always, through the millennia.
Mhm.
But you're that's what it's about, kind of like addressing in a fantasy of
Yeah, in a fantasy, like at what point would we need to go back to? Would we be able to change some things? What would we change if we could
right,
change them?
right.
And I think everybody would have different answers. So this is my answer to it. This is
Yeah.
my,
Which is
fantasy
good
account.
for people, we all have to really get together and throw out every idea we can think of to
Yeah.
try to
Mhm.
or we'll be like what was that, the Raiders, the two I don't know, anyway, one of those movies about the future where everything's on fire and
Uh,
everybody's dead and
oh gosh. Yeah.
apocalyptic or whatever,
there's
but
so many.
yeah, we don't want to have that
Yeah,
happen.
mine's more hopeful than that. So,
Good.
I call it climate fiction for the hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, apparently we're all still here if it's 2350 is when people come back.
Yeah, right.
2050. So we got another 30 something years, 26.
Yeah.
So
Um,
what were your original your articles about many years
Oh,
ago?
well, I'll tell you, when I was in junior high and high school, my dream was to write for National Geographic. Actually, even when I was a little kid looking at the world globe. And I loved reading National Geographic and finding out about other cultures all over the world. And so the first article was about the Kalash tribe of northern Pakistan, and they are a minority tribe there. They're still, practicing shamanism and animism and that kind of thing. And they were prejudiced against by the majority there in some cases, not everyone, obviously. But anyway, I visited them on my first trip to Asia in 1979. And, my friend Cephala John had said, please, if you can, write about us, write about what's going on, write about our customs, write about our culture, and we'll make you a blood sister if you come back. So I came back, National Geographic sent me back with a photographer. And I found out later that my father had actually submitted a whole bunch of articles that I was sending back to LA and some photos. And the photo editor and the print editor were having lunch one day. One of them mentioned, "Oh, I heard from this person about this tribe called the Kalash that nobody really knows much about in the West." And the other person said, "Oh, yeah, this photographer, Steve McCurry, sent in some photos." So they teamed us up to go there for the Winter Solstice Festival. So I wrote about that. I'm still in touch with them. I just sent some money for the solstice nowadays it's so easy with Western Union and with WhatsApp and all of that and Messenger. So I sent it to my friend's son to help them out, for they've had some issues. They've had some floods, they've had some drought, and they got snow, which is more than I can say for Santa Fe right now. But so that was the first story. And then the second one was 1985 is called Along Afghanistan's War-Torn Frontier. Now, I speak Dari. I still speak it fluently. And I had become concerned about the refugee situation. There were 1 million refugees in Pakistan, I think maybe even more by that point, after the Soviet invasion. And I had been in Afghanistan in 1979, just before the Soviet invasion. I left 10 days before. And so anyway, I went in for National Geographic, and I did not take the famous picture that was taken by Steve McCurry, but that was my story. So, there really was a story. And then years,
tell us about the culture, about a little bit about their culture.
well, I mean, before the Taliban took over, back in the 70s, there was a lot of good changes that were happening. People were slowly getting educated. Women were not covering their heads. Women were they just got TV, so women were newscasters. There were women doing the folk dances. There were women doing, income generation projects and flight attendants, teachers, doctors. So that has all changed now. But a friend of mine, Fatana Gilani, who I've known since 1982, founded the Afghanistan Women's Council. And for many years, a lot of us were able to raise funds, especially for income generation projects and, learning and all kinds of things. Right now, that is not currently possible because of the rules of the Taliban, but I keep in touch with them.
Wow. What about, you mentioned animism and shamanism? What are those things?
Well, it is, like a lot like indigenous practices anywhere in the world. So a lot like Native American practices. I mean, everything is different, but very nature connected. I guess that's the best way to describe it. And, they do believe in a higher power. It's just a different conception than, Christianity or Judaism
They have
or
a different kind
Islam.
of religion.
Yeah, but it's like nature is the higher power. And so they're very, very connected with nature and the cycles and the seasons.
Okay. I hear you've won awards. And what are the
Yeah.
awards? What awards have you won?
Well, this Love and War in the Land of Cain, which is also on Amazon, and it is my novel that was set in the 1980s. It is not my story. The journalist Elizabeth Owen is not me. I didn't meet this wonderful Afghan doctor and fall in love. That didn't happen. But it's a great love story, and it's a great story just about people being heroic, and a doctor who had trained in the US who's Afghan going back to Afghanistan and working, in Soviet occupied Afghanistan secretly. And then the reason it's called Love and War in the Land of Cain is because Kabul was said to be the land of Cain, land of Nod east of Eden, where Cain went after killing his brother. And that's why they say there has been a lot of dissension and civil war in that country and those areas. So his brother had ended up as governor working with the Soviets. So they never meet each other again, but there is that conflict built in between the two brothers who grew up in the same family and loved each other and just had different points of view. So you have to read the book to figure out how it's all resolved. But anyway,
Like it
that
could
one,
be a movie.
yeah, right. Well,
A
I
really good
started
movie.
writing a screenplay several times, and then it just, hasn't yet come about. But it's so that won the National Federation of Press Women Best Novel Award for 2022. And
Wow.
then some of my work for Voices for Biodiversity, which I'm volunteer senior editor of, has won. I mean, we win best website every year, best nonprofit website in that contest just about every year for the last number of years. So I work with a good friend who's an anthropologist, Tara Waters Lumpkin. She's up in Taos. And we have worked on that project together. And then I have something called the Global Diversity Film Project. And I did, for example, an oral history of an Athabascan Irish friend of mine who's turning 93 next month in Alaska, and about her growing up in the village in the 1930s, and about being mixed race, and about how she, sort of dealt with that. And then her sobriety journey, which I feel is important for those who are sober curious and need to be, and especially young people. So that's 47 minutes long. That's on my YouTube channel on Global Diversity Film. And we're going to cut it down into sections because a lot of people, like especially young people, maybe they're sober curious, from any community, and they want to hear how great someone's life is. I mean, we don't all have that issue of
Hmm.
addiction. But for those who do, I think it's so inspiring.
Yeah, and addiction
You
touches
mentioned,
so many of our lives. Like we may not
Yeah.
have it, but we know somebody that does. And it's
Yeah.
really frustrating when you don't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
So
I have friends who their family, a family member will be an addict. And it is so frustrating because there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no way, how do you
mm,
help this person? You almost can't help them unless they're ready to help themselves. And
well,
so
yeah.
yeah, I think there is a need for more literature about that so people can understand it better.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
had mentioned that she's up in Alaska, and you've been
Mhm,
to Alaska. You
mhm.
rather like Alaska.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a winter girl. And so I'm missing snow right now in Santa Fe. I mean, we haven't gotten any since November, but hopefully some is coming. But I find that, it's interesting because Anchorage, Alaska you wouldn't think about it, but it's really diverse. It's got people from all over the world. A lot of our military members are there, and a lot of them, when they were stationed overseas, married women from other countries. So we have a big Thai community, really good Thai food, lots of good Thai restaurants. And, Thai, Cambodian, Laotian, from that period of time and from other periods of time. And I understand that the public school district, I think there's 100 and some languages spoken.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so it's and the natural beauty, because I mean, wild rivers that have never been dammed, and I went on an eco cruise one time. It was just a very small little boat that my mom was supposed to go on. Unfortunately, she passed away 3 weeks before.
Mhm.
But I really felt, even though I had the insurance, I could have canceled. I just felt like she wanted me to find someone to go with. So a good friend from Alaska, who's like a sister, went with me, and we were kayaking and bushwhacking, and then we go from place to place. Glacier Bay is just so beautiful, so amazing. I mean, just to get the chance to be in that part of the world, what they call Southeast Alaska, where it started out from Juneau and ended in Sitka. And I know a lot of Alaska Native people. Was involved in the Healing from the Four Directions conferences, which were, various forms of healing from all over the world. And of course, interfacing with, with medicine as well, with science and medicine. So bridging those worlds of the indigenous and the Western and the spirituality and the science.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. They're talking now. They say if you can live the next 20 years, if you're still alive in the next 20 years, there's a chance that with all the AI stuff and all the things, like they're going to rebuild organs and all kinds of medical advancements. So they say if you can make it for the next 20 years, you'll be set. You'll be, in that community of medicine where I don't know if we'll die ever, but maybe not live forever, but they can really do a lot more medically.
Well,
But
yeah, it's interesting. It's like you think about the movie Avatar and how, he was able to, he was a paraplegic, but through the avatar, he was able to gain his movement back and eventually became that avatar. So I really like science fiction. I've always loved it. Read Ray Bradbury as a child. And then there's some other authors like Anne McCaffrey and Sherry Tepper and different people that I've read over the years because it just opens the imagination to so much.
yep.
So my next project might be about a planet of cat people, space-faring cat people who come
Oh.
to a planet that has some of Earth's problems, and then they have to come down as either cats or humans and help us in some way and open our minds.
Wow, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, I've said this before on our podcast. I wonder if we are creating our reality, like the people, the writers and the people in their minds. Our minds are very powerful. And we don't even know how powerful they are, but are we creating the future when we're everything we imagine now? Because so
Mhm.
many things happen that were like 30, 50 years, like the Jetsons. They always talk about the Jetsons,
Yeah.
except
Yeah.
where's the flying cars? We don't have those. But all those things that the cartoon of the
That's the
Jetsons,
only
like we're
thing
doing
we
a lot of
don't
that now.
of
Huh?
the Jetsons. That's
Move your
really
mic closer, John.
that's really the only thing we don't have.
Yeah.
Are the flying cars from the
Yeah.
Jetsons. I mean, we have the robot housemaid. We have, okay, they had you press a button and the meal came out. We have microwaves. So you wait three
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we have this, what we're doing
Yeah.
right now.
Right.
They have the
Right.
video calls,
Yep.
living in towers, going to work at the office 2 or 3 days a week and complaining about it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, we
Pretty.
have the
Yeah.
Jetsons, you
Well,
Yeah.
and then other books. I can't think of any right now offhand, but I'm like, did the stories of the future? They're like writing a book today, imagining in 2050 what's going to happen. And then I think, well, is Deborah going to create our reality in
Yeah.
2050? Like, are these authors really? And then
Yeah.
the people see it, the audience, we go see it. And are we manifesting this in our minds?
Yeah.
I like to just think that way. I'm not real
Yeah.
convinced that it happens that way, but I would
Well,
question it.
there's a lot about there's a woman named Lynn McTaggart who's a journalist, a science journalist, and she's written a book called The Intention Experiment. And her first book was The Field. And then there's a good friend of mine, Dr. Larry Dossey, who has written a book called Healing Words about prayer and medicine and about the power of prayer and positive intentions and positive thoughts. There's been a lot of scientific studies about that. for example, the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And the idea is that our good intentions, our prayers, whatever your spiritual background is, can, in many cases, help change the future in a positive way, whether you're praying for your grandmother or your child or, something good to happen. So I just keep going back to, positive intentions. And there's something in chaos theory called black swan events. And they can either, what they are is highly improbable events that have a big impact. And, it might be a stock market crash, or it might be a stock market, like some new invention or something. And so again, I just focus on the positive. What would I like to see? What would I like to see? If I'm still alive, I'll be in my 90s in 2050. What would I like to see in 2050? What kind of world, a kinder world, world where people take care of each other.
Yeah, more harmonious. Yeah, I wonder, and our speech, our language, they always say what you say to you're programming your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly believe that. I had a health issue several years ago, a couple decades ago now. And every night when I went to sleep, I would do my positive affirmations, my prayers to God, like what I wanted and what I wanted to achieve. And I swear I was so in touch with the spiritual world during that time that I got through it. I got through this health issue and I was strong, and I started all these little businesses that were not from me. I mean, I wrote a children's book. I wrote several different books. I started classes, and it was coming from outside of me. It was not from inside of me. Like, I didn't create that stuff. I don't know where it came from. I was like writing books in my car. Or I'd think of something, and I had notes everywhere, little pieces of paper all over the place, because I'd think of something. And my creative life was so fertile during that time. And I think it's because, and sometimes I go, I've got to remind myself to get back into that spiritual relationship with God or the higher power, whatever you call it, so that I can tap into my creative juices again, like that. Although my work is creative, I'm a marketing director, so I'm always, trying to be creative. But and I think creativity, I just saw a podcast, I can't remember who it was that said this. I would like to give them credit, but they were talking about how creativity makes you feel alive. I think it was Tom Ballou. Do you guys ever watch him? Impact Theory. And I think it was Tom Ballou, Ballou, or however you say his name, but he was saying creativity, when you're creative, it makes you feel alive. And I think that is true, especially when you watch little kids, and they're creating and they're so proud of it and happy. And anyway, but kind of relating to our, us creating our futures, us creating our reality. And the truth is, you can see the good or you can see the bad, and I've been told before, they called me Pollyanna, because I always tend to see the good in people. I don't think I'm so much that way as I've aged. It's hard not to start being more aware of some of the bad stuff in the world too. But I just always, when I was younger, everything was good. Every person was good. I never saw the bad, which can be harmful. I mean, you've got to be able to identify when you're in danger. But it's also a very pleasant, positive life if you just only see the good. You're creating your own reality. But yeah, that's interesting to think about. I'd like to do more historical research and see what people wrote and what they thought at one time, and then 20 years later, was it coming about, coming true, whatever. But I'm not as a writer like you and Jon. I've written a couple of things that are not award winning or anything that would be too great. But I do like that process. I like the creative process. So do you find, Debra, how are you inspired when you come up with these ideas to write things? Like, what inspires you? Does it just come?
Yeah, I think that ever since I was a little kid, I was writing stories, and my best friend and I were writing stories about little people called the Lattics. I don't know how we came up with that name. And it was probably derivative from the Hobbits, but we were 10, And so I guess for me, I've always had very vivid dreams. Some of them really pleasant, some of them scary, but so I think that sometimes I just think, okay, if I read it, I would love to be a best-selling author, as you know, I know we all would, but even if a few hundred people read it, it's out there. It's just like the thoughts are out there in the universe. And so I would say that when I write fiction, in the end, I want to come around to a positive place. I mean, I hate dystopian fiction and movies that have horrible endings, you know.
No.
I mean, it's like, oh, why would I read that? That's creepy. I don't want to be that negative. And sometimes they're very well written. And I won't mention any authors. I don't want to insult dead or living authors. I choose not to. But, you know, when you think about just how things can be, I think that's the thing. And so for me, that's a pleasure. You know, a better world is possible. There's actually a book, you know, called that, I think. But, you know, just thinking like, oh, wow, you know, what would I like to see in the future? And, you know, and I think we all have in common that we want to see, you know, harmony, and everyone wants the same thing. See, my mother was very unusual, and she took me as a young teen traveling in Eastern Europe when it was, you know, Soviet dominated, and the Soviet Union, driving. I've never met anyone else who did that, you know. But her point was everybody wants the same thing. You know, we want to fall in love. We want family. We want friends or chosen family. We want cats and dogs and birds and horses. We want beautiful nature around us. And, you know, we want enough to eat and some luxuries, you know. And so it's just basically, you know, really the great majority of people all want the same thing. And if we can see that in each other, we can find more common ground, even if we don't know how to get there yet. You know?
Yeah, no, I think that's an important message, a really good message that I think we get caught up in things and life. And now with the internet and all the information, you know, they call it information and its opinions, but you know, the internet, these social media sites and everything, they win when we lose, because they win when they create rage and division and people fighting, and then they click and they get angry. And that's how, you know, they do better. They sell more advertising because they get more clicks. And so we have to be smarter than they are. I think we have to start getting smarter and say, I'm not going to fall for that. You're just feeding me things that make me angry, instead of looking for the positive. And that's a lesson for me, you know, me, everyone. Like, we all have to remind ourselves, don't see the bad, see the good, find the good in this person and in this opinion. And, you know, there's always some truth to, I think, everybody's opinion. If we understand, you know, if we really understand.
Well, I've been really impressed by some of the stuff I've seen on social media about people in LA helping each other out. And there is a veterinarian, I've forgotten her name right now, but she had an empty veterinary hospital, and she's rescued so far and literally went in herself into some of the areas and rescued people's cats and dogs that they'd left behind. And there are, you know, there's people coming together, you know, for informal food banks, and Airbnb, I guess, gave housing to 25,000 people. And, you know, because some of my friends who had to evacuate had friends or family, or they were well off and able to go to a hotel and get someone else to take their animals or whatever. But not everybody. I mean, there's a lot of people who had to evacuate who don't have those resources. And so, you know, I just think people do come together. Ultimately, people do come together.
Yeah, you could hear stories about that, like that, every day. If we just had a news channel, one channel that just told stories of heroic actions of people.
Good news. That's just a channel that does good news. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and featuring people who have been, you know, heroes, like the little boy that saved his sister from the pit bull or the attacking dog, or, you know, like the fireman who went back and rescued the family's cat because they, you know, wanted the cat. Stories like that are a reminder that we are good. We are all good. There is good within us. And I think the world would just be a much better place if we were reminded of that, and behaved, you know, in that way. But I think when push comes to shove, most people are heroic. You even hear the story of, I read a story once of an inmate, I guess that one of the guards was having a heart attack, and the inmate saved his life.
Yeah.
I mean, it's humanity. You can't watch someone die
Right.
without doing something, without trying to save them, or an animal, the little dog paddling in the river and
Yeah.
somebody jumps in and rescues them. So yeah, maybe we should do that, John. Maybe we have to start a channel like that. Another YouTube channel.
That's a good
Good
idea.
news, just good
Yeah.
news. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
I've always said that there
That would
should
be
be a
fun.
newspaper that just back when there were newspapers, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, there was one actually in Santa Fe when I first moved here, 1994. It was called the World Times, and it was a good news newspaper. And so that helped me transition to living here and making a living because I was freelancing for them. And, it would be anything from, a real happy story to a story of someone dealing with difficulty. Like in those days, a lot of people had AIDS and we didn't have the medicine for them. So it was a story of the family just taking care of the son and brother who had AIDS until he passed away. But it was the love that they showed him.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah. So anyway, it was really fun. It didn't end up lasting long. It lasted a year or two, but it was a really great concept.
Well, they say, in the newspaper industry, if it bleeds, it leads because people like blood and gore more than anything else.
right.
But I tell you, when I get on YouTube and I start watching pet videos,
Yeah. Yeah.
babies, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, dogs and
Yeah.
babies or cats and babies, you
Yeah.
can't stop. It's addictive. Like that gets me addictive more than any other kind of social media topics is just
Yeah.
watching pets and cats, how they just knock things off the shelf all the
Yeah.
time. And you just watch video after video of cats knocking stuff onto the floor
Yeah.
and the funny
Oh,
things
yeah.
that they
I'm
do.
gonna go get my cat. He's
Oh,
right
good.
up here. You
Yes,
gotta
please.
see
We want to
him.
see your cat. Yes.
Come
That
on.
would be awesome. Yeah, I think that would be a fun thing to do. Although, you and I don't have time to do it, but
Good news. Yeah. Where would we'd need a news feed.
yeah,
Just,
and you'd want it from all over the world or the country,
yeah.
all the
Yeah.
heroes. Now, what's his name? Sammy?
Sammy, this is Sammy who appeared in a blizzard on Christmas Eve, and I'm gonna give him the
I
little
can't whistle.
treat that I promised him if he would come in here. And the other cat's here too. So I'm gonna
Oh,
pick him up
well, if you're
and
giving out treats, I mean,
yeah, yeah.
hey.
Come on, Yeshi. Yeah. They're just such great company and they're so funny. Like they all have their different habits.
Hi. Hi, kitty, 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 kitty. Hello.
Yeah, so go get your treat. Go get your treat. Here, I'll give you some more. And yeah, they're just great company, like when we were going through the pandemic and couldn't really go too much of anywhere. I had at that point 3 cats. One of them passed away after that. But, just waking up in the morning and seeing a cat or a dog or your bird or, I love horses and I haven't ridden for a while, but, got really good at riding, had a wonderful instructor in Taos and drove up there, a lot for a couple of years. And it just gives you joy.
Yeah. I have 2 dogs. And
Hmm.
John's heard the story. One of them is a puppy, and she has not given me joy for the past year. She's given me a lot of toilet paper rolls destroyed. Like she gets them off the shelf. I'm like, how can she even
Oh my
carry a whole
gosh.
roll of toilet paper and tear it up into tiny little pieces all over the house? Um, and I'm like, where was I when you were doing this? I was probably
Mhm.
cooking or something. But yeah, she's caused a lot of a lot of pain and anguish. But she's growing up. She's going to be a
She'll
good
grow
girl.
up.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I could have done without her
Uh,
antics for the past year.
yeah. Mhm.
But anyway, yes, they're so joyful. And I'm so glad that I have both of them now. Yeah.
Mhm.
And John, you had a cat. We know that you had a cat.
Yeah. I've had a
You're a
few
cat
in
person.
my time, but
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm
Animals are the
glad
best.
we found a lot of other stuff to talk about.
Scoot your microphone over, John,
Gosh, I hate, I think I
or
have a
turn it up, or
problem.
because
Yeah.
your volume is a lot lower than ours, I think.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me,
Yeah. I think humor is also really important in writing. And this is what I've loved about all of John's books. I haven't read every single one of them because he's written so many. But, I particularly love Me and George. Is it George and Me or Me and George?
Me and George. It's
Me and George.
grammatically
Yeah.
incorrect, but that's
Yeah. Yeah.
Intentional. Yeah.
I mean, I just find myself when I'm reading your work, I just am laughing aloud and
that's
smiling.
because on one hand it's time travel fantasy, which
Yeah.
you enjoy,
Yeah.
and some people say that the me in Me and George
Uh-huh.
is me.
Uh-huh.
So you can sort of
Yeah.
hear the character of the
Yeah.
author.
Oh,
Uh,
definitely.
that's what he
Yeah.
is. He's a sci-fi author in the book. So that's I can understand that, and those that book that's of them other than the boss.
Mm-hmm.
Me and George has been the second number one seller.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like it would be a good one. I didn't read that one yet either. That's your most recent one, right?
That's the most recent one that's out. Yes.
Okay.
Hopefully the next one another handful of months or so. So.
Yay.
But
Awesome.
well, there you go. So Deborah, thank you so very much.
Yeah.
Uh, we'll make sure, if anybody's interested in your books, please, folks, Amazon.com. And you could find Deborah just by simply Googling her, Debra Denker.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
put up your websites so people can find you.
Okay. Yeah. Because I've got several and I've got the nonprofit one, as well, the
Okay.
globaldiversityfilm.org. And,
Okay.
made some films in Tibet, made some films in South
Wow.
Africa, just short ones, but, they're all on my channel. So
Yeah.
people might enjoy
Awesome.
that.
Wow.
All right. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Kelly
Yeah.
and John.
Thank you, Deborah. Really nice
Thank
conversation. Thank
you.
you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Take
Thanks.
care.
Bye. All views expressed in this video belong to Kelly Nicholson, John D'Amore, and guests. These discussions do not represent the opinions of any entity whatsoever with which they have been affiliated now or will be in the future. The opinions expressed are solely theirs, and since they are critically thinking human beings, these views are subject to change, subject to revision, and subject to rethinking at any time. These conversations are not meant to be taken as advice and are only for the purpose of entertainment. All statements may be based on hearsay and not necessarily valid proof of any claims in this video. It is not our intention to teach or advise on any topic. Unless otherwise noted, all photos are public domain. Thanks for watching A Slice of Life with Kelly and John.